Hey everybody, my name is Patrick and I'm a part of the Exponential team. This is the Exponentialness podcast. And today I am delighted to be with my friend and colleague, Selena Freeman. Good morning, Selena.
Good morning. How are you, Patrick?
I'm doing well. Thank you. So glad to have you on today.
Yes.
For those of us who don't maybe know what you're up to these days from a ministry point of view, tell us a little bit about your current role and responsibilities in the kingdom.
Yeah, so I just recently began a new role as the Church Multiplication Catalyst for the USA Canada Church of the Nazarene. So, what
Wow.
does that mean?
Yeah, that's a lengthy one.
Yeah, so really, obviously to catalyze a movement of church planting across USA and Canada within our denomination. And, a good way to kind of look into that, we've kind of started with some core behaviors.
Okay.
What will be our culture shaping behaviors? So, to prioritize prayer, to build a multiplication team, to align church planting, language assessments, training to form multiplication networks. That's a
Wow.
core behavior for us. And then to partner with multiplication movements. So obviously, exponential is a movement of multiplication that we're partnered with. So that kind of helps me as we're kind of establishing a new role. Culture shaping behaviors, I think, is a great place to start. So
Wow.
that's kind of the behaviors that I am trying to cultivate and catalyze across our region.
Wow. I'm so glad, and there's so many questions I want to ask you about that. So help us understand a little bit about kind of maybe just take us back in the short history of multiplication for your movement, kind of where you guys have been, and now as you're steering the ship, so to speak, your kind of vision for where you want to see things go.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, since 1988, in the Church of the Nazarene, we have closed more churches than we have opened.
Mhm.
So we have been in a decline of the number of churches since 1988. Now, in that, we've had a couple of seasons of kind of resurgence and some good things that have happened, but uh, the reality of it is, I mean, I've basically been brought into this role to try to kind of to turn the ship. Within our denomination in the last couple of years, we've seen an increase in membership, we've seen an increase in salvations, in baptism, but we are still continuing to see a decline in the number of churches planted versus the number of churches being closed. So that's kind of where we are, but believing that God is going to uh, bring a resurgence to church planting.
Yeah. And what I find so interesting and wonderful about working with you and your team is you're taking this storied foundation of the Nazarene movement and you're
Yeah.
trying to bring this into more of a multiplication framework, if you will. There's so much in that. What is most exciting for you in that role at the moment? And maybe what are some of the challenges as you see as you kind of are starting to step into this? And yeah, I mean, obviously a big job that they've given you.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the thing I'm most excited about, and I know probably anybody listening can relate to this, when you sense that the Holy Spirit of
Mm,
God has
yeah.
placed a specific assignment upon your life and has been preparing you for that assignment all throughout your life. Like there is a peace and a joy, even in the midst of the maybe fear or intimidation. There's just this peace and joy that you're walking in the assignment the Lord has laid before you. So I know that to be true. So I
Wow.
praise God for that.
Yes.
I think the greatest struggle is simply we've kind of set a goal within
Okay.
our denomination. Within 3 to 4 years, we would be structured to plant 200 churches per
Wow.
year.
All right. It's
Yeah,
a big goal. It's a big goal.
right. And that's a big goal, but that's kind of the number that we would need to see the tide change from
Okay.
decline to increase
Hmm.
in number of churches based on the number of churches that are being closed. Now, obviously, we're also working toward church revitalization and church health and trying to see less churches closed. But what's before me is creating a new structure. So as you know, a church that's structured to run 30 people is not going to probably run 200 people.
Right.
And so my job is a restructure of processes and systems when it comes to multiplication. So
Wow.
one of the reasons we're looking at networks and,
Right.
like you said, moving toward obvious multiplication language and strategy versus just addition.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's obviously you guys have got a lot of advantages being a denomination with a storied tradition and a past. What are one of the two elements that you're trying to build on that are already there for you in
Yeah.
terms of your organization?
Well, one of the great things about the Church of the Nazarene is we are structured in districts.
Okay.
And so for USA Canada, which is the region that I oversee for multiplication, we already have 78 structured districts,
Okay.
which means we also have 78 district superintendents who oversee each of those districts. And so my job is to partner with and to come alongside of and provide hopefully some processes and systems for our district superintendents in multiplication. And so one of the ways we're trying to do that is to not only obviously have a district superintendent on each of our 78 districts, but to discover a multiplication catalyst
Wow.
on each of those 78 districts. So then, as you know, a district superintendent has many, many, many roles,
Sure.
obviously not just multiplication. So as we identify those individuals on each district, that in a sense kind of begins to form the team of people that I will work with and communicate with and pour into. And so that is something that's already in existence that I think is helpful, but we're trying to build on what's already in existence.
Yeah, love it. So much of this conversation around networks is and not forced me, drawn me into becoming a geek about how networks actually work, sociological phenomena of networks.
Yeah,
What is interesting about what you are describing is you've already got this base, this kind of all your districts are geographically based. Is that right?
that's correct.
Okay. And now tell me a little bit about the catalyst that you're looking for. So that's interesting. Let's just talk about that for a minute. How are you and your team talking about these catalysts? What are you looking for? How's it going?
Right. So
Right.
ultimately, yeah, yeah. Well, I will say we of our 78 districts, we already have about 40 districts who have someone identified either in that role or that they are hoping to place into that role. Now, the a district has the autonomy if they want to place someone in that role in a hired position, if they have budget to do that, they can. We already have a few districts who have someone in that role that's a paid position, and maybe also like assistant district superintendent and church multiplication catalyst. Maybe it's a dual role, but for most districts, this will be a volunteer role. Yeah. Now we are working on funding and hoping that some funding might come through that could at least help even provide stipends for those individuals. But the idea is that these are the people on the district who will help to align language training, assessments, help form networks of pastors for multiplication. So it's just going to be that point person that really will help to catalyze the movement. As you know, if a movement's going to happen,
Mhm.
it's going to happen up through the grassroots of the organization,
Well
right?
said. Well said.
So there has to be leadership and structure, if it does not get down into the local church, into the grassroots of each district, we're not going to see movement. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with that.
Wow, it's fabulous. What I'd love to do is explore a couple of kind of key big ideas with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You've got, obviously you're stepping into this new role. You've got some leadership chops that other people have seen, obviously. So, one of the things I like to do in this series is just talk through what people are learning about specific leadership qualities. And what's drawn me to kind of your story a bit is you're stepping into this new opportunity with a lot of history behind you in terms of the
Yeah.
organization, But talk to me a little bit about what you have learned when it comes to trust, because I remember one of the times we were chatting, you had said, well, I'm trying to build a lot of trust right now. And then I think you might have said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you said so that I could use it or something like that. So like, because you're
Sure.
about
Yeah.
moving the mission forward.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, ultimately, to me, what we're talking about is the ability to influence people.
Mm,
And in order to influence, there has to be a level of trust because we don't want to manipulate people. We want to influence people in a healthy way.
good word.
And so I've always heard it said, if you want to impress people, tell them about your success. If you want to influence people, share with them your failure.
That's so
And
good.
so I just think there has to be this level of true authenticity, relational leadership, servant leadership. And so I was in youth ministry for 18 years, and that taught me to be very relational. And then I led a staff when we planted the church we planted. I led the staff for many years. And we had a lot of young, maybe up to 18 to 20 staff members that were in their 20s, which was so much fun.
I bet it
Um,
was.
but it was very relational,
Yeah,
very relational. So then the question is, how do you build that kind of trust and relationship over a region of 78 districts
wow.
through the United States and Canada?
Yeah,
And so that's kind of, but I honestly, I think it kind of goes back to just being a real, transparent leader, being real about the celebrating the wins, being real about the what you might see as the losses, and so just working in relationship. And I think my hope is that networks. I mean, that's, when we talked about the four R's of networks, relationship is the first R. So my hope is that in the forming of these relationships, that's going to help build trust. Um, and I think just the fact of being there and doing it, like walking through church multiplication for the past 10 years within our denomination. That's why I was placed into this role. So there's kind of a level of trust that, Selena has been there and done it. And now what does that look like for her to help us do this as a denomination?
right. And you have been so there's some really great leadership wisdom in that. But number one, I want to touch a moment on you want to take the small and kind of you said the grassroots and bring it into
Yeah.
fruition. Is that easy to do in a denominational structure? Is it help or hindered or indifferent to that? Because I think you're onto something there when you've got this responsibility to change the direction of the organization, to so to speak, or to get it to multiply in certain ways. But
Yeah.
yet you're also got to do some grassroots stuff. So how are you making all that work?
Um, the great thing about the Church of the Nazarene, and maybe most denominations would say this, I don't know, but I do feel like we are kind of a family. The Church of the Nazarene in USA Canada is approximately 5,000 churches.
Wow.
So it's that's a good number, but it's still like when you break it down into 78 districts and 78 district superintendents and be able to relationally work with people like that. I think that it does help within a denomination to be able to get it to because there's already a system in place
Right.
to bring it down into each district, and the district superintendents that I'm working with have been very kind, and they're very excited. They're very willing to listen. They're excited too. They're ready for I think some direction and some unity within the denomination on what this looks like to continue in multiplication. So I think that has been really helpful.
That's great. So
Yeah.
let's step into to networks and multiplication a little bit more directly. Um, you and I obviously are working together on a number of levels as your organization works with Exponential, which we're grateful for. But networks, not in the waters all the time. We don't talk about them. And then there's some misunderstanding about what a network actually is. What has drawn you? I'm just curious. What's drawn you specifically to this concept of church multiplication networks, these small groups of friends on mission?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I love, and it is. having great impact on me to think about what it is truly to be friends on mission.
Mm,
Um, Even in our cohort a couple of months ago, when we really focused in on friends on mission, I mean, I had kind of an emotional, long lasting response to that conversation, Patrick, because I do think sometimes, and maybe one of the things that is complicated about denominations is sometimes it can feel like we are in competition with each other a bit
mm,
rather than supporting each other. You know,
yeah,
you go into these district conferences and district assemblies, and it's this church is doing this, and this church is doing that, and this church is accomplishing this, and this church. And so, you know, in our human nature, we all can fall prey to that. So I love the idea that we are going to be working alongside of one another and not working not against one another, but in any kind of competition with one another. So I think that's really drawn me in. And then the other thing, denominationally, in the Church of the Nazarene, we have a lot of small churches. I mean, I
mm,
think our average church size is probably about 50 people.
okay.
And so when we think about multiplying churches, it just makes sense that if we could bring together, you know, 4 to 6 local congregations, even though they may be small congregations, if you take the resources and the relationships that you would find in 4 to 6 local churches, to be able to plant and multiply out of that, because you know we really believe that churches plant churches,
Yeah,
and but it can be a network of churches
great.
that plant a church. So I think that's part of the draw also.
That is, yeah. Can't thank you enough for that, Selena. I couldn't have said it any better myself. That's two of the big reasons why I think everybody should be in a network. So talk to me a little bit about what you expect these you're calling them multiplication networks, right?
We are.
Okay, I love that
Yep.
phrase. So talk to me about the leaders you're looking for. So one of the chief opportunities and challenges when we're starting a network is to maybe find the right leader. Who are you looking for to start these new networks on your behalf?
Well, that's a great question because we're still very new to this network conversation also. But I think that a network leader, you know, first and foremost has to be someone who they're not just wanting to form a network for reproduction, but for relationship,
Yeah,
for health,
good.
to create. Because here's what we know that even in that, the networks that will be the most productive will be the networks that have the strongest relationships.
Wow,
So, yeah, I think a network leader has to be
that's
a
cool.
relationship. They have to be able to build relationships. Um, you know, we go even going back to the IC and U conversations from Hero Maker. Like they have to be a person who can see the gifts
Wow,
in every person in the network because everybody brings something to the table.
wow.
Everybody brings something to the table. And so when you can see what each person brings and you can motivate them and give them the safe space to use that gift, man, that's when we see amazing things happen.
So well said. So well said. I love that, and well done connecting trust and networks together. So like the most fruitful networks. Here's what I heard you say: the most fruitful
Yeah,
networks are the ones where the relationships are strongest or the trust is highest. Is that a fair way to?
absolutely. Yeah.
That's such a simple equation towards kingdom multiplication. And I love how you're stressing I what I've learned about you and your leadership so far is you're going to be all about church planting in the kingdom and getting the mission getting the mission done. But what's
Yeah.
really interesting is to watch you interact with your teams around this idea of being a family on mission or friends on mission.
Yeah.
You had mentioned youth ministry. Give yourself a second. Why are those two things so important to you? The idea of relationships and multiplication at the same time, because often they live in tension with one another. We're either really great together, we hang out together, we do a lot of good things in Jesus' name, which
Yeah.
we're all for, or we're just here to do a job, and once the job's done, we're going our separate ways. How are you hanging that tension together?
Yeah.
And
I think
what vision are you casting, I should say, too?
I think it goes back to creating a culture of calling. And what I mean by that is probably, if I could get on a soapbox about anything
Please.
in scripture,
Here's your
right?
soapbox. Go ahead.
Yes. I always go back to Ephesians 2:10, which talks about the good work uh that we were created anew in Christ Jesus to do. I believe every follower of Christ
Mm,
has a call of ministry,
mm,
has a call of multiplication upon their
wow.
life.
Wow.
And so if I love someone, if I'm in relationship with someone, one of the greatest things that I can do as a friend is to help call out in them what God has placed in them. And now that is my personality. I'm a number 3 on the Enneagram, right? I'm an achiever, producer, performer. But I mean, this idea that we're just all going to get together and kumbaya, like, why? Like, what? Let's get together and make something happen. Like, let me call out in you the gifts that God placed in you and help you use those. So I just think I hear, yeah, I will tell you some of my most frustrating, and yet I'm all about being real and honest and authentic. And I believe everything happens through prayer and the movement of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And yes, please share with me your struggles. Please share with
Mm,
me. But we're not going to just hang out there.
right.
Like, I am not going to just sit in the pain with you. Like,
Mm,
I will, but then we're going to see, well, what's the purpose in that? What's God want to do with that? How can we move forward in that? So to me, I think that friends on mission and right, like, being productive should actually coincide more than it does.
yeah.
I think that's kind of the secret. I think that's kind of the secret sauce.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said, my friend. And yeah, I applaud all that you're saying because the tension is, and we're doing some work on this, Selena. We're doing some writing on this, and I'm doing a lot of research on networks and friendship and theology of friendship. And I love
Yeah.
what you said because there is a deep theology of friendship, and it's coupled with a theology of missiology, of mission. And I'm exploring those two things at the same time. How are you talking now about the mission in the context of a network? So you guys are planting churches, in one structure, I think you said, and now you're trying to think about, or what does it look like for networks to actually plant churches? How are you talking to your teams about that? Because that is a bit of a change, if you will, like it's a change in how a lot of
Yeah.
church planting has gotten done. Like you said, it's not been a collective effort all the time. It's usually been a centralized effort. So as you're talking to your teams, how are you dealing with that?
Well, and I would say that we are definitely still in the stage of building that framework.
Okay.
So, one of the things that we keep going back to and we don't have clear answers for yet is the scorecard,
Okay.
right? Because when you as a church plant a church, you kind of know how to keep score of that. When a network of churches plants a church, what does that look like on the scorecard? And
Ah,
here's the deal. We would love to say, I get it. We would all love to say the scorecard doesn't matter. Who cares?
mhm.
Who cares who gets credit? Who cares what it looks like? Okay, but that is a culture that has to be developed.
Interesting.
And if you're not currently living in that culture, then it's going to take a little bit of time to shift DNA around who cares about the scorecard, who cares who gets credit. Now, I will say, one of the things that Exponential has done for the Church of the Nazarene, whether it's Exponential Conference or the Exponential cohorts, it's helping to change the language and culture and DNA. We go back to, right, the idea of building our castle or
Yeah.
building the Lord's kingdom.
Yeah.
But I would say we are still working on changing that DNA and culture of what it looks like. So I think that for us, one of the primary conversations is going to be, what does the scorecard look like, and how can we organize that in a way that encourages people to multiply and not just add? Because we've talked about this in the cohorts. Um, addition, sometimes multiplication can feel like subtraction, right? Like if you're used to adding, if you're
Yep.
used to addition, multiplication is far greater than addition. But when you're first walking into multiplication, it can feel like subtraction because you have to let go and
That's right.
you have to send people out. So I would love to say we've already moved through all that, but that's just not reality. We're still moving through that.
Yeah. So, okay, couple of questions that I'm trying to keep it short and brief for you. Talk to me about then how are you, and if you don't have this all figured out, totally understand. You're
Yeah,
barely, how many months have you been on the job? You've been on the job.
like 5 months.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you get a little time, my friend. You get a little time. But how are you then? What are you spotting in the way that your movement has been starting churches to what is possible with the networks? Like, because you just said it there that the scorecard is going to be a big issue no matter what we're doing.
Yeah.
I love how you gave us permission to let that take time. Because that's, I
Yeah.
think, one of the other in this network conversation, if I may, sometimes it's like, oh, we've been there, we tried that, or I don't understand it, and it's like we're snuffing out little flowers that even haven't they've barely grown up out of the soil, and we're snuffing them out. How are you guys moving from more of like if and please change any phrasing I use from a centralized church planning process to a more of a decentralized church planning process? Because I think that's where we do see more multiplication at the edges, as you kind of said. So how are you talking to the team about that? Or are you giving it some time to think through it? Because I think for many organizational leaders, that's that's a gap that's got to be closed. How we did things before and how we want to do things now in the future through the networks.
Yeah. Well, and again, yeah, I'm still trying to clarify the vision on that. But okay, some just really practical ways that I think networks are going to allow us to do that. One of the things that we see a lot of churches doing so is communities on mission.
Yep.
And so we have a lot of churches that are now creating these communities on mission. And we have churches that are creating these communities on mission, not just in their local context, but across borders, across barriers. And so this idea of forming those into networks
Yeah.
where they are decentralized, but they're still, the receiving the relationship and the resources and maybe residency programs and the creating reproduction. I think that's definitely a decentralized way we're going to see networks help us multiply. And then I think allowing, right? So through the leadership of our districts and our district superintendents, but then allowing churches to come together and something to be multiplied out of that that doesn't have to follow the exact structure that we have used in the past when it comes to starting new churches. I think that's going to be really crucial for us. Another thing, so even though right now we're kind of structured geographically,
Okay.
I think to be able to form some networks around church expressions of churches. So,
Yeah.
like in our denominations,
Ah,
like to begin to form some networks for prevailing model church plans, but
yeah.
then also to have some networks for our house churches or networks for our non-English speaking churches. I think that they will be both geographical and non-geographical networks that will help us to provide those resources and reproduction.
Wow. So, okay, so well said. The Let me just camp out a little bit longer on the organizational change, and then I want to drive into the network again. As a leader, then what has the conversation been like for you all to say networks are something we really want to lean into? Or is that just you going out on a limb with the organization saying, I hope this works? But I'm really curious because it feels like networks are trying to happen. And of course, I'm biased. This whole podcast is devoted to it. You would expect me to say that. But it really does feel, and particularly when I listen to younger leaders, I hear
Yeah,
them wanting to be in more authentic, collaborative environments than maybe I was in or you've been in
yeah,
as a church leader, which I think is beautiful. But you also have decided, hey, I'm going to try to lead some organizational change. How are you having that conversation kind of with the existing organizational leadership? I'm sure it's full of love and grace, but it might not always look, hey, we're trying to accomplish the same thing, but how we're going to do that is different. Talk to me a little bit about it as a leader.
Yeah, that's a great question because you're very right. There is the organizational structure of leaning into networks, and then there's the organic structure of leaning into
Well
networks.
said. That's really well
Yeah,
said. Yeah.
and it's both and.
Huh.
So the great thing about the denomination is I do feel this, Selena, figure out what is working and bring it to us. And so as I have researched and studied and looked into what is working, networks are working. We
Wow.
know that. We
Wow.
see that. And not only are they multiplying, but they're creating multiplication that is sustainable, that's healthy, with leaders that are healthy. And so I do feel like denominationally, I have this permission to lean into what is working. Now, I will say we actually are going through a shift in our regional director for USA Canada. And
Okay.
so I have kind of also, it's kind of like, well, wait until we get the new leadership in place, and then we'll all sit down and talk about scorecard and what this looks like denominationally and structurally. Because part of my personality is also, even though networks can work and move organically, like I want it to make sense and work within the structure of the
Sure.
denomination.
Sure.
Yeah, I just that's important to me.
Yeah.
So that's what that kind of looks like leaning into denominationally. And then I think organically, the great thing about our organizational structure is that each of our districts actually have quite a bit of autonomy. Our district superintendents have quite a bit of autonomy,
Okay.
that they can begin to form networks really however is going to best suit their district and what's going to work for them. So I think that will allow for kind of the organic formation of networks also.
Great. And so well said. I love the organizational and the organic. That's just a great way to think through it. In terms of leaders, let's get back to networks and their leaders. And obviously, you're taking a group of your leaders through the Reproducing Network Accelerator, which is it's designed to help you all start new
Yeah.
networks. Tell me a little bit about the leaders that you're selecting for that, because I think if we're going to see networks really catch, we need to get a little bit clear about who leads these things and why. And you went there a little bit, but I want to draw on some of your great insight and wisdom because you spent a lot of time and prayer and energy focusing on who you wanted to select for this. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. Everything has to begin with prayer and
Mm,
discernment with the Holy
mm.
Spirit. So I knew, and our goal was to get about 25 people in this cohort. And so I knew I needed my most catalytic district superintendents because that's our chain of command, right? So we have 8 district superintendents who are currently part of that cohort. And what's great about that, and they are already I have other district superintendents coming to me saying, "Hey, so and so said they're in this cohort about networks. I want to be in it the next
Wow,
time, like the
that's good
next time,"
news. That's good
because
news.
that's right. That's how that works. So grateful for my district superintendents. And then we wanted to place some other district leaders. So a few of the people in the cohort are district multiplication catalysts. I think we probably have about 5 or 6 who are in that district role. So again, they're going to help us identify people in that role for our other districts. And then the rest of the cohort is made up of uh, multiplying pastors. I mean, pastors across our region who are already active in multiplication to help us dream about what it could look like to not only have churches multiplying, but networks of churches multiplying.
I think it's such a smart change management theory, Selena. So I'm really excited to kind of look over your shoulder and watch what you guys are up to with it. Um, let's just talk about the small networks then. What are you giving them permission to do, and what can't they do? You know what I'm saying? As you're thinking about this,
Sure.
as you're trying to like where, and this is really a question about not. authority and control. It's more about minimum required or minimum viable opportunities, the actual essential principles of a network. So as you guys are having this conversation as an organization, what's permissible and what's not, and why?
Okay, right. We need to come back in 3 years, Patrick. We need to have this conversation
Done,
again.
done. You're on my
When
calendar.
I actually feel like I have some like meat because we're still so formative.
Of course.
But again, that's the great thing about denominations.
Mm,
So even for us, even what is going to be happening organically within districts, um, multiplication that happens for us ultimately has to be approved by a district superintendent. I mean, if we're going to register a work,
yep.
uh, whether that be a prevailing model church, a community on mission, a house church, whatever that might look like, and because I've been commissioned with 200 churches a year, so we have to somehow count what we're doing. If
That's right.
so any work that's going to be registered as a new work has to have the approval of each district superintendent for their district. So I think that's kind of a have to.
Yeah.
And they have to be able to meet the guidelines of what that looks like to be registered. But gosh, and obviously we have our articles of faith.
Of course.
So any kind of work that we organize is going to be in alignment with our articles of faith. One of the things that's really exciting to me, though, and I feel like we really are embracing, while we are certainly a proponent of education and ordination
Sure.
and the licensing process, I think we are recognizing that lay people are incredible multipliers, and they
Mm.
have to be. Well, and in fact, if we're going to see a movement, multiplication cannot just be coming from ordained elders in the Church of the Nazarene,
Amen.
right?
Yes.
Like multiplication has to be coming up from lay people within congregations. And I feel like we are allowing and giving permission for that a lot more. And I think that's an exciting and a healthy thing.
I can't agree more. You're doing something I hope you're aware of. You're using language as a visionary leader very effectively. You're using words like expressions, collaborative. Just tell me a little bit about how, is that just something that comes natural to you personally? Because language defines culture, and I
Yeah.
imagine in an organization like yours where you're kind of like the chief of change management. You're the woman who like walks in the door and you're like, all right, I know it was good yesterday. It's going to be better today.
Yeah. Yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about just the language that you're using to create culture, because I think we're going to need more of that as we kind of hope to see more networks started.
Yeah. And we are definitely still defining language, but that I am drawn to that, and I mean, after being in multiplication myself for 10 years, planting a church that's planted churches and had multiple campuses, we've all heard it said, uh, culture eats vision and mission for breakfast, right? And it's exactly what you said, Patrick. Culture is the language we use. I mean,
Mm,
culture is what we are actually doing, and what we are actually doing is shaped by language. So, like anytime I meet with a group of people, I explain to them what is happening through Multiply Collective by our 6 culture shaping behaviors. So, because we you can tell people what you want to happen or what you think should happen, but what's actually happening in alignment with the behaviors that you want to shape the culture and DNA. And how do you say that over and over and over again? So that means a lot to me that you recognize some good use of language, because I really am trying to be intentional in that, because I know that language is what shapes culture and behavior.
you are. Give us those, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Some people do
Yeah.
this to me like when I do the 4 hours. Give me the 4 hours right now. What are those six words that you're using to frame culture?
Yeah. So prioritizing prayer,
Okay.
that's behavior number one. Behavior number two is building multiplication teams. Okay. Behavior
Mhm.
number three is aligning church planting training assessments um, and language alignment. So next, we're going to form multiplication networks based on right relationship, resources, residency, reproduction.
Look at you got
We're
the
going.
four R's.
I got the four R's in there. Yeah. So our fifth culture shaping behavior is that we're going to host practitioner events. And what that simply means is we're not currently denominationally, we're not providing a lot of support around our practitioners. So like what does it look like to host some events for our practitioners? I mean, exponential would be one of those, but
Sure.
what does that look like?
Yeah.
And then we're going to continue to partner with multiplication movements. So exponential is a great partnership for us. Dynamic Church Planting International, that's a
Yeah.
great partnership for us.
Great.
So yeah, so it's prioritizing, building, forming, hosting, partnering, just those action, and are we act and they're measurable. I mean, to a certain degree, all of those things, like this month, what did I do to prioritize prayer? What did I
Oh,
do
that's
to
good.
build our multiplication network? What did I do to form networks? What did I do? So like yeah, there's got to be like something that's holding the work accountable. And to me, those are what's holding our work accountable.
Well,
Yeah.
I detect, Selena, you're going to have to contribute to an exponential resource in the very near future around all that, because I think you're absolutely spot on, and I mean this in great respect to anybody who is listening to this, but the way that you're talking about language is unique, and I think is really important because we at Exponential wrestle with language, and even the phrase networks. I know it's like, well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about Send Network? Here we're talking about Friends on Mission. So having to redefine that. And so
Yeah.
to your point, just repeating, networks are a small group of friends on mission. A collective is a group of networks, etc. On and
Yes.
on it goes.
Yeah.
It's so important. How's it going then? How do you think the language conversation is going within your organization then?
Honestly, it's amazing how quickly people will adopt language.
Wow. Okay.
So here's a great example.
Yeah.
So of our 78 districts, there's not been a particular word. So a district superintendent can say, I have someone leading church planting. I have a church planting coordinator. I have a new works coordinator. There's never, and so I have not told anybody to use the word church multiplication catalyst. I have told no one to use that word.
Wow.
But I have, every time I talk to them, I ask about I don't care what the languages they're using. I care, but I'm just saying, I just say, how's your church multiplication catalyst? Who's your church multiplication catalyst? And already it's amazing to me how people just repeat that back to me. Like how many districts are already adopting that language so that we all know, regardless of language we've used in the past, this person is going to be our district church multiplication catalyst. And it wasn't like we had to announce it and fill out a form and send it in. We just use the language and use it in a powerful and passionate way, and people will adopt it.
So
Yeah.
good. It's so good. That's a whole nother podcast I want to do with you someday. I'll be on. I want to honor your time here. Just a couple more questions. The back to networks and even the church multiplication catalyst. How and I'm Selena, you're bringing some real wisdom and insight to organizational leadership, which I personally don't have. I've not ever been a part of a denomination, so I just really appreciate your pioneering thought leadership around this and your leadership. How are these catalysts working alongside the networks then? Because I know with a lot of organizations that we're working with at the moment, these small pockets of change, like you insert these people who get it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is there a strategic alignment that you and your team are making? Hey, we're going to match that catalyst to this network, or we're going to do it by geography, or you're trying to figure all this out at the moment?
Yeah, Patrick, I wished I could tell you. We truly are. We truly are figuring that out as
Good.
we go.
No
So, yeah.
problem. Yeah, that's great. Um, let me ask you a question. A denominational leader who is listening to this, our friends on mission, we're all sisters and brothers in Christ. The way that I look at it, Jesus is pretty clear about that in John 17. What would your encouragement be to them around networks and collectives? what would you just be saying to somebody from another denominational organization about why they should lean into this conversation?
Well, I think number one, we see that networks work,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean,
Right,
I
right.
want to do what
Stop. Hard
um,
stop. Hard stop.
I want to I want to do what's working. I want to do what's working. And I want to lean into reality.
Yeah.
Okay? Part of my job is going to help us denominationally lean into what is not working
Mm,
and what is actually working and what is actually real.
yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I don't I don't care what the number are the okay, here are the numbers. Are those real
Yes. Yes,
numbers?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Are they real? So I think that right, as a denominational leader, it's going to help you lean into what is working and what's producing health. I love that the new book that's come out. It's on my desk right here. I'm excited to read it.
Dave's
Uh,
new book.
right,
Yes.
how healthy leaders create lasting impact. I think this is going to. I think networks, friends on mission, truly leaning into what that means is going to help us produce healthy leaders. Let's be honest. We have produced a decade
Mm,
of very unhealthy leaders in the
mm,
church.
mm.
And we've got that has to change. So I think as denominational leaders for us to realize what it looks like to help our pastors, our practitioners be healthy leaders. And I think networks are is going to be a part of that.
I so appreciate you saying that, Selena, because on one
Yeah.
level, I come at it as a former, I was in the army and I was in business. So the mission is clear to me. Like that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
We're a sent people. But the soul, there's a lot of conversation in our kind of exponential ecosystem around soul care, around
Yeah.
taking care of pastors. And I appreciate your vulnerability and just admitting that there maybe some of our systematic challenges have really hurt people. The
Yeah.
way that we've, required pastors to behave and put too much pressure on them, and it's created this sense of isolation. And collaborative networks that are friends on mission is one of the ways to serve them. So I really appreciate you going there. If somebody was interested in planting a church with your organization or getting in touch with your office, how would they do it? Just give us your email or the connect, and then we'll make sure
Yeah.
when we're getting this out, we'll make sure that it's on the screen as well.
Yeah. The best way would just be to reach out to me directly, which is sfreeman at usacanadaregion.org.
That's
That's the
easy.
longest email address ever.
I love it. We'll make sure we get that on the screen as well. So, I really appreciate you spending time with me today. I really do. You've been a source of joy and encouragement to me. Like you, I've, not been we've only been a part of Exponential now for about a year. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what is the right way to have this conversation about networks. And I just really appreciate you personally, and I appreciate your courage and leadership in the Nazarene movement. And I'm here to serve you guys. So you guys rock on. Keep doing better.
Thanks,
Keep doing the thing.
Patrick.
Yeah, you do. And then we'll see you next time, my friend. Okay.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right.